By the time Mexico vaccinated its first citizen on December 24th, 2020, 134,000 Mexicans had died from COVID-19. Rated the worst country out of the world's 42 most developed to spend the COVID-19 pandemic by the Bloomberg news agency, vaccines were a priority. Mexico's federal government had approved vaccines from 6 different producers, and President López Obrador promised 10,000 vaccine brigades would inoculate 12 million people by the end of March. When that date arrived, barely half that number had received even one dose. We visited the country's southernmost state, one of its best performing throughout the pandemic, to document how this country has charged, or limped, as the case may be, into the vaccination stage of the global pandemic. Chiapas, Mexico's southernmost state. Here in the state capital, it has been a long wait for vaccines. They are perhaps 3 months late. But for the over 60s here, in line for their second and final dose, the hardest times are nearly behind them.
Probablemente no por la magnitud, ha habido equivocaciones, tal vez errores en el manejo, pero creo que en términos generales va avanzando, ¿no? Hemos tenido decesos de amigos, de compañeros, familiares. Pero estamos tratando de obedecer los protocolos, ¿no? Para poder amainar esto, y pues agradecemos que ya se llegó el tiempo de la vacuna para estar más controlado esto.
As patients wait, marimba music, the party tunes of this region, plays in the background. There's an atmosphere of excitement. For Dr. Brenda López, the director here at the vaccination event, it's one step closer to the end of a difficult period.
La participación es excelente. Desde la primera dosis que tuvimos de la vacuna, la gente ha respondido muy bien, han acudido, han buscado y solicitado la vacuna, y para la segunda dosis es lo mismo. La gente está muy interesada en poder quedar protegidos.
For Jerónimo Martínez, receiving his second and final dose of the vaccine, it's a great relief.
Pues la vacuna es algo que estábamos esperando desde hace ya el año pasado, ¿no? Que no había. Independientemente de que esté uno vacunado con la segunda, de todos hay que seguirse cuidando, porque esto no lo podemos pasar por alto. Tenemos que seguir con los cuidados. Yo quisiera que ya fuera mañana, pero pues esto yo considero que sí va a tardar algún tiempo.
For the state's health authorities, these events are part of a wider strategy. Yet not everyone here has been on board, as the Chiapas State Health Secretary, Dr. José Manuel Cruz, knows.
Y la población, no toda. Hay un porcentaje que no se le obliga ni quiere aceptar la vacuna. Es muy respetable.
Entiendo que algunas personas, por su cultura, algunos no han querido ser vacunados, ¿no? Por información distorsionada, pero sí están llegando a los municipios, están llegando las brigadas.
That section of the population can be found further inland. These are the Chiapas Indigenous heartlands, a world apart from the bustling cities. Felipe Gómez is a community leader in Santa Marta, in the remote municipality of Chenaló, the home of the Tzotzil Mayan indigenous people for thousands of years.
O sea que en algún ciudad han escuchado que sí le están dando vacuna, pero aquí la gente no quiere. Es que le tienen miedo. Han escuchado que la vacuna que vienen a vacunarnos, pues dicen que no es bueno. Esa vacuna trae enfermedad, dice. Por eso le tienen miedo y no quieren.
Fiercely independent vaccine brigades sent by the state into these communities are not always welcome.
Pues la verdad no lo sé, según la actividad que dicen, si lo reciben, pues si no, pues ahí lo mandan de regreso. ¿Sí?
These communities have been able to take these decisions because in Mexico, in municipalities where the majority of residents are indigenous, self-governance by ancestral methods, known here as usos y costumbres, is a constitutional right.
La diferencia es como ponerse de acuerdo con las actividades.
In Palenque, a city founded by the Mayans and now a major urban area, Dr. Maria Elsa Lopez has been running the regional vaccination efforts and is well versed in ancestral governance.
Por usos y costumbres, toda la decisión de un pueblo se toma en una asamblea general. En la asamblea general se reúnen todos los habitantes de esa comunidad y ahí determinan si van a aceptar o no van a aceptar la vacuna. Entonces, en esos pueblos originarios no se está alcanzando tan rápidamente como nosotros quisiéramos esa meta, pero estamos buscando otras estrategias. Afortunadamente, nuestros mismos trabajadores de salud, muchos de nuestros trabajadores de salud hablan la lengua materna. Entonces, es muy importante que nosotros hablemos en su idioma con palabras que puedan comprender, no palabras técnicas, sino palabras muy claras para poder hacer llegar el mensaje, ¿no?
Lorenzo Jimenez is another community leader in Santa Marta who speaks exclusively in Tzotzil. And in some of Mexico's most marginalized regions, where state presence is minimal, any incursion, even if it comes bearing free vaccines, is viewed with suspicion. While the rest of the world may have been turned on its head since March 2020, for the Tzotzil Mayans, existence in their mountainous homelands is much the same as it has been for thousands of years.
Casi normal o pero eso ligen ko afskali pero nautica sa jale mal tigane ba
And ultimately, when it comes to vaccinations, the health authorities here are happy to respect their decision.
La población es muy baja en relación al total de la población y además no es todo el pueblo. Muchas veces se prohíbe por mandato, pero hay personas que por autonomía propia vienen y se vacunan. Debería de ser una población muy grande para considerar que la vacuna podría fracasar por la cuestión de los usos y costumbres.
Away from the anti-vax communities, Chiapas has taken a statewide strategy. It's a highly transited territory. Almost all Central American migrants moving north tread on Chiapas's routes, and while stopping migrants may be almost impossible, holding infection rates down is not.
El plan chiapaneco de vacunación realmente está sumamente diseñado para poder lograr la protección que queremos, la inmunidad que queremos en el ambiente. Entonces nosotros estamos haciendo como un cerco epidemiológico de todo el estado, donde se asienta la llegada de muchísimos extranjeros y ya están vacunados.
With an easing of lockdown restrictions in Central America, 2 devastating hurricanes in late 2020, and a change of US administration, the number of Central American migrants once again moving towards the US border has spiked. Central America has lagged behind Mexico in vaccines, but rollout here has made them available to all who require them, Mexican or not. Tío César, a 65-year-old migrant from Guatemala, was vaccinated 2 days ago.
El gobierno ha prometido que a todos les va a dar su vacuna. Es parte de la seguridad de su pueblo para que los contagios no continúen que la gente se vacune. Y a veces los gobiernos...
Tío Cesar was able to get a vaccine because the shelter where he stays is in constant contact with the local authorities. Inside the shelter, migrants are untouchable by migration authorities, but moving further north along the migrant trail exposes them to detention and deportation at any point. For the refuge's director, Gabriel Romero, he says the growing fear around migrants in the context of the pandemic is unfounded.
Pues la curva de comportamiento también muchos de ellos son jóvenes, vienen fuertes en edad madura, productiva y de trabajo. Entonces, generalmente la pandemia no se comportaba en este grupo de personas, ¿no?
As migrant numbers surge, Mexico and Central American states continue to deploy their armed forces to tackle them. The Mexican military's other major operation is running the vaccination program. Marta Delgado is the country's sub-secretary for Foreign Affairs, leading the efforts for vaccine diplomacy and distribution. She says the military are the best government arm for the job.
The logistics of the Mexican military forces is very, very high level, with helicopters, with the airplanes, with the soldiers, with the very well time scheduling, because we really need that.
For independent organisations, the increasing confidence placed in the military is becoming problematic, particularly in an era of health crisis.
Lo que nosotros estamos viendo o por qué nos empieza a preocupar de la emergencia sanitaria por COVID-19 en el marco de estas acciones de continua transferencia de facultades y de capacidades a las Fuerzas Armadas. Solo en materia de salud están haciendo distribución de equipos y medicamentos, están haciendo distribución y aplicación de vacunas, remodelación y custodia de hospitales, resguardo de hospitales y contención de agresiones a usuarios, que ya nos preocupan porque exceden precisamente el orden constitucional y lo violan todos los días. Estamos ya trascendiendo la frontera de hablar de militarización para empezar a hablar precisamente de militarismo.
As Mexico moves ahead with its vaccination program, the debate continues over its performance. It may have been the first country in Latin America to begin vaccinations, but it quickly lagged behind other nations.
He is a person who makes the decisions.
Lorianne Jimenez Fivey is a political analyst and author of one of the most critical books on the Mexican government's handling of the pandemic. She says in the vaccine era, the incompetence continues.
The vaccination plan has been managed in exactly the same way as the general pandemic strategy, which is in a very irresponsible and negligent manner. Mexico handles this in a very non-transparent fashion. For vaccinations, we have no data sets, open data sets to verify. So this is very not transparent. Now the government has sealed the contracts for vaccination for the next 5 years, meaning there's no way of knowing what they bought, who they bought it from, where the money came from, if contracts have been signed or not for 5 years. Why do this? I know of no government that has taken these steps to conceal the information in terms of vaccination.
In the offices of state, such criticism is shrugged off.
It is not a very good time to sum up the amount, because it's like calculating the speed of your travel when you are just starting the car. I think that we have right now a very important and diversified portfolio of vaccines at this point.
As for what the situation may mean in the medium term, the outlook from the scientific community is bleak.
Mexico is the country that reports the most infections and deaths in the health professionals, the most in the entire world, okay? So where are we going for the rest of the year? If we take all of this into consideration, a very critical point, plus vaccination is going so slowly that what we can expect for the rest of this year is a very, very dire scenario for our country.
As Mexico's vaccination program continues, not always according to plan, its effects on the country's pandemic will be seen much further into the future.